Today we're going to talk about Sivan. We're going to talk about Sivan and about Rosh Hashanah. I have a few things I want to speak about before, two things that might be no get to what we're speaking about altogether. I'm sure everybody knows that today is Yom Yerushalayim. And I'm not going to go into halachas where they say halal, don't say halal, all these things. But we definitely have to thank Rabbi Shalom that we can go to the Kotel, that we can live in Eretz Yisrael, that everything is beautiful here. And there's no question that we can dominate the Kotel, our tefillos can be more accepted, and we can connect, and there's no problems anymore. So for that alone, whether that's halal or not halal, that you'll ask a rabbi. But to thank Rabbi Shalom in your heart, for sure enough to ask a rabbi. I can even say every one of us has to thank Rabbi Shalom in the heart. The other thing I want to mention before I really start is an interesting minig on Monday. Monday is Erev Rosh Chodesh Sivan. There's a minig in the Eretz Yisrael. A lot of people do it. People do it in Chutz La'aretz also, and it's easy to get. People say the tefillah of the Shla. The Shla was a great makubal, lived about 400 years ago, and a lot of things we do today, for example, saying Shiur Malos or Alumni bubbles based on the Shla. The Shla was buried in Tveria next to the Rambam. So you wrote a beautiful tefillah, and it's a tefillah about your children, but davening that your progeny, your offspring, will always be connected to the Torah. And the minig is to say, in fact, he says, when he writes the tefillah, he says, Libi Omar, my heart says, the time to say it is Erev Rosh Chodesh Sivan. And the reason is because I guess the HaTorah. And what I just mentioned, famous thing of the Stipler. Stipler used to say he made his pillows wet with tears. He used to cry for his son Chaim, and obviously his tears really worked. And this is what Chaim turned out to be. But it's part of our training for our children is to train them, of course, to do the mitzvahs properly and to give them a good role model and make them happy about doing it. But tefillah is a very important thing. Now, just a cute story, which shows the Chazon Ish's brilliance to this. The Stipler in the beginning didn't like the way Reb Chaim was learning. Stipler was a tremendous amkin, and Reb Chaim was a tremendous bucking. And he went to his brother-in-law, the Chazon Ish, and he said, "What am I going to do with my son Chaim, the way he learns?" The Chazon said something brilliant, and it's something to think about. He said that he'll get to where you got to, Chaim will get to where you got to in a different manner. And that's what happened. He became an amkin through his bekiyas. Something to think about. But I want to talk about the time now, which Shiur in a week, exactly 1 week from today. And we just finished the Srias Omer, and there was the Avelis of Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, and it's all at the same time. And I want to know if there's a connection, and I think there is. One of my Rabbiim wrote a sefer. It's called Umka Shel Machshava. His name is Ephraim Kalinsky, and he wrote in honor of his daughter's wedding, which I missed, Lag Bomer. And some of what I'm saying is based on what he says, but I'm going to give another introduction to what I want to speak about. And that's an Orach Chaim HaKadosh. And if you ever were in yeshiva with me, I probably said this Orach Chaim HaKadosh for many, many years, Parshas Yisro. Orach Chaim HaKadosh says an unbelievable thing. It says, this pasuk says, we're going to read it next Sunday, V'yisur refidim, v'yichon b'midbar, v'yichon sham tach zahar. They traveled from Refidim, they encamped in the desert, and they encamped opposite the mountain. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, and he goes through why every word of this pasuk is redundant. We knew they're in Refidim, we know they're in Midbar, we know they're by Har Sinai. What is this pasuk saying? So Orach Chaim says that this pasuk is giving us 3 prerequisites for Kabbalas HaTorah, 3 things he must do, midos really, before he makabel the Torah. And I'm going to tell you that in a mitzvah Hashem and everything else, but it's very important ideas. But Yisum Refidim, Refidim was where Amalek was. Chazal say, what's Refidim? Rifin Yadayim, so like a weakness in our hands, laziness. The reason that Amalek was able to attack, Rifin, our commitment to Limud Torah was a little weakened. He says the first prerequisite of Kabbalas HaTorah, and the truth is, I always say that Shiur is Zman Matan Torah Seinu. But it's not when he gave the Torah, it's giving the Torah. Every year Shavuos is a reenactment of Kabbalas Torah. Each one of us re-accepts the Torah on Shavuos. So Matan Torah Seinu. So he says that to accept the Torah, you can't be lazy. If you're lazy, and the truth is, the more you're lazy, the less you accept the Torah. The less you're lazy, the more you accept it. And I always mention Rabbeinu Yonah says that everybody has different midos. This guy gets angry, this guy's hospitable, this guy's not hospitable, this guy, but everybody's lazy. Everybody's lazy. And Rabbi Yasha was lazy, even though he never missed getting up 4:30 in the morning to learn. No matter when he went to sleep, even though he was lazy, he overcame his laziness. And Rabbi Feinstein got up every day at 5 o'clock to write shuvas before he went to Shiva to daven. It was also lazy, but he overcame his. Anybody who's successful overcame his laziness. But everybody starts out being lazy. And the way the Orach Chaim describes it is Esav HaMafsid. It's the weed that destroys any production. So the first prerequisite is overcome our laziness. Second says, they're encamped in the desert. Chazal tell us, Ein HaTorah nikdas el misha mesim atzma midbar. Torah is only acquired by someone who makes himself a midbar. What's a midbar? Everybody walks through it. The midbar never complains. Patience, good midos. Good midos, a good person. A person can't become a Torah if you don't have good midos, if you're not patient, if you're not a good person, you don't try your best to improve yourself. The second prerequisite is good midos. Second, right? That's a very important prerequisite. And the third thing, the Chanasham, Vichan Sham, Vichan is singular. Rashi says, B'lei vechad, right? B'lei vechad, they accepted the Torah together. They were all together. The only time in the entire midbar everyone was together. So the third prerequisite was we want to be part of the group. I don't want to be myself. I want to be the tzaddik. You can be the Rishayim. We all have to be together in this. That's the third prerequisite. And I think I can tie that in. We want to speak about now. It's a little bit based on what Rabbi Galinsky said. It's interesting about Barbanel. Starts out by the Omer. The carbon Omer starts the day after Pesach and is brought every single day until Shulas. Right? That's Sfiras Omer. We count the Omer. So the Omer is barley. And Chazal tell us barley is Michael Behema. Michael Behema. It's the only korban that's ever barley. It's Michael Behema. And the Barbanel says, I'll read you what he says. The Barbanel says it's a lirmos, it's a remes, and so for all the years a remes, should call Yisrael how you would say Mitzrayim can be behemoths. When we left Mitzrayim, we're like behemoths, we're like animals. Lachain how you makrivim. Sarim, we're bringing sarim. It's a carbon sarum geru. It's a low level carbon. Why? Kadesh al yachshiv shebezeh carbon. Hashem needs it. It says Hashem wants the carbon. He wants the carbon of sarim. He wants a low level carbon. It means even though we may not be on the level we're supposed to be, even though we're not there yet, Hashem wants us anyway. As long as you're going to keep working on yourself, we could be. In other words, the carbon sarim. Hashem wants that carbon. Sometimes He wants solids, which is refined flour. But here on these days of Sphira, He wants a carbon sarim, and it's to show us, to tell us that even though we're not supposed to be, Hashem is not rejecting us. Hashem still loves us, and He wants us to be with Him. And it's interesting. The Rabbi goes on to say, Kaddish Shavuos, when we got the Torah, so right, and we became intellectually really we understand where we're supposed to be. There's a new carbon, the Mincha Chadasha, right? And it's the Shmatim is the Shtei Lechem, 2 carbonas of bread, right? Which was solids, which was a purified flour. As we can change, that's the whole idea of Sphira, is we have a time to bring ourselves closer to Hashem. We were starting out like being a behemoth, and we could bring ourselves to the highest levels if possible. And that's what really we're supposed to do during the Sphira. And the truth, the Sefer Chinuch says that the whole sphere is for this. I'll read what Sefer Chinuch says. Yibnei came, he called Ikrei Shel Yisrael Ba'avoda, Nigolu Olov, right? L'chol HaGedolim Shaleha. Right? We were commanded to count the sphere, and these things knows we machas for Yom Tov Shel Pesach. Count the sphere. Ad Yom Nesinas Torah. Why? Laharos to show, but nafshenu inside of us, hachevetz hagadol, the desire within us. El Hayom Anichbad Anechsav. This we want to get to that day. In other words, the whole time of the sphere, and put the two together. The Rabbi said we like a behemoth, but the whole time we want to get to that day of Shavuos. We're trying to get there, and really working on ourselves to get there. An interesting Ramban describes this first Omer as like a cholamoid. Cholamoid. It's not. It's days between 2 Yom Tovim. The first Yom Tov is Pesach, and the last Yom Tov is Shavuos, and these are cholamoid, which are days of preparation. We're supposed to be working on ourselves to get to that level. And I just mentioned that the Orach Chaim says the 3 things that we really need to get to that level. 3 things, again, is get ourselves away from laziness, remove ourselves from laziness. 2, improve our midos, and 3, to be together. When you think about it, the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva, we're still in Avelis all these years. It's one thing we have Avelis in 3 weeks for the Korban Beis Hamikdash. The Talmud of Rabbi Akiva, so okay, the terrible thing that people died, and and I mentioned these days during the Sphira, especially the end of the year, in the time of the Crusade, a tremendous amount of massacres. Okay, but there's no din Avelis. There has to be some level of tightness on I forget which day. It's Chav Sivan or whatever it is. There's a tightness because but we don't have the right. What Rabbi Akiva? If you realize all our Torah that we have today, the entire Torah Shabbat Peh is from Rabbi Akiva, right? Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 Talmidim. Imagine how much Torah was lost when 24,000 Talmidim died, and he started again. Rabbi Akiva was able to start again. That's another unbelievable thing. In other words, Rabbi Akiva could have said, "Listen, I tried you, but I want to make Talmidim. You killed him. What do you want from me? I'm finished." But he didn't do that. He didn't hang up his hat, his Hamburg, and say, "I'm finished." He got 5 new Talmidim, but he started again. But the Avelis is 24,000 Talmidim. The question is, what they were Chayiv Misa? They were really Chayiv Misa. They were no low nogu covered zebazeh. They didn't give enough cover. Very nice pshat. What do you mean no good to cover? They were showing the winter showing. But each one of them knew they didn't want covered, they hated covered. If they hated covered, why should I get the other guy covered if he hates covered? But the fact is that the fact that you don't want covered doesn't mean you shouldn't give covered to the next guy. That was their avera. In other words, I mentioned two things that you need for Kabbalas Torah. One is midos tovos, good midos, and achdus. And the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva violated this during the Sphira. They violated the Sphira. They didn't give their chaverim covered, even though they say, "What's covered? We hate covered. We don't covered." They hated covered, but even though you may hate covered, I'm still mechuyev to give covered to the other guy. I still have to give covered to the other guy. So even if you hate covered, it doesn't mean we shouldn't give covered. And tzaramidos. And second of all, achdos, we're all together. We all have to be together. If you're not giving cover to somebody, it means you're not together. You think he's not as good as you. You don't give him cover. So you need the achdos. And because of their Talmud and their Akiva Eger, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu medaktek im chasidov chut hasayra, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is stringent, is medaktek, is careful with his chasidim to the chut hasayra, to the hair's breadth. He stepped on a hair's breadth. They didn't make it. They didn't live. But the Avelis of Rabbi Akiva's shrink sphere, it's a much worse time. So part of the fact that we're still with Avelis for the Torah that was left, but for us to realize that I can't go to Shavuos if I'm not nagu covered, if I don't give the people cover, if I don't interact with people properly, if I'm not ba'achdos with them. So part of what we have to do in these days is to really consider and realize, as we approach Shavuos, what is my interaction with my friends? What is my interaction with my children, with my rebbeim, with people that I know? Right? Is it the proper interaction? Am I not covered? I give them the right. Do I give them the expected cover they're supposed to do? Do I treat them in an honorable way? And nachas, we have to be together. So the sphere is really the availance of the sphere is to teach us that you want to get to Shavuos. You realize what Shavuos is. That's our goal. We're in the days of Chalamoid, we're days of preparation, like the Sefer Chinuch says. We're counting the days down until we get to the Matan Torah day. But we have to make ourselves that kind of person to be ready for the Matan Torah, and we shouldn't Chalila fall into the trap that Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim fell into. And something to think about: are we really doing that? Are we really doing it properly? And I always say, it's interesting that Shavuos, Yom Tovim, there's no halachas of Shavuos. There's no shofar, there's no lulav, there's no matzah. Right? There's no fasting. There's nothing in Shavuos. But there's been a minig, a long time, an old minig, to learn all night. Why? What's the pshat in learning? Because that's what Shavuos is. Shavuos is Kabbalas HaTorah. If I can make the commitment to learn, that's what it's all about, the commitment to learn. I mentioned once that we went to the psychologist once in the Shabbaton, and he said an interesting thing. He said that what is Hasmada? Okay, most of us are not Reb Chaim, that's all, who was able to finish Shas Bavli, Rishalmi, and all the Midrashim every year. I always tell a cute story. I'll tell you a cute story as an interruption. There's a famous Maggid, Rabbi Yankel Galinsky, a famous Maggid. And he used to say, he said once, I'm a bigger tzaddik than Reb Chaim. It's a big sense. Why do you say that? Because I was Reb Chaim on the Siyum, by the Siyum. Makes the Siyum it's like a Siyum. This year he made the Siyum, by the way, day before Purim. He makes it every year of Pesach. The day before Purim is because it's an extra month. So he made a Siyum, and he died the day after Purim. So the day before Purim, he made a Siyum. And he made, so Yankel is by a Siyum, Zera Pesach Siyum. And so he gives him mazel tov, and he says to Reb Chaim, lift up a year, you live another year, and you do it again. And Reb Chaim says, v'chein lamar, you should also do it. So Reb Yankel said, my bracha came true because he learned it. He did it next year, and his bracha to me, v'chein lamar, you should also do it. I didn't do it. So he says, I'm a big tzaddik. My bracha came true. That's just a joke. But anyway, but Reb Chaim was learning all the time. We're not going to learn all the time. The psychologist says, what's hasmada? Hasmada is you're middle of learning and you need a coffee, you need a drink, you need to step out for 5 minutes. He says, don't step out for 5 minutes. Wait 5 minutes. The extra 5 minutes of that'll do it for you. The extra little push. And it's a very famous thing, as I'll say, and it's something to think about. He says, who's an Oved Hashem, who's not an Oved Hashem? The Oved Hashem is Chazers 101 times. And a non-Oved Hashem, Chazers 100 times. Very hard to understand the whole concept. Chazar 100 times, you're not Oved Hashem. Chazar the one time makes it Oved Hashem. See, 100 times is what you need to the Chazar, whatever the number is, but Chazal 100 times. That was when you went that extra step. When you went that extra step, that makes it an Oved Hashem. So these days, as we prepare for Shavuos, right? Monday is tomorrow is Erev Rosh Chodesh, then there's Rosh Chodesh, then there's Shavuos. One part of my preparation is to show Rabbi Shalom, I'm ready to go a little bit more. I'm ready to learn a little bit more. Not 19 hours a day, but 5 more minutes I'm going to learn. 5 more minutes I'm going to commit myself to. That's part of what we have to do now. We have to really try to say, how am I going to fall into Shavuos? And it's not, we're not going to change. We're not become Chaim overnight. But at least a little bit more. We all have a few minutes more that we can always find another few minutes. You know, the famous story of Yisrael Salanter. Somebody went to Yisrael Salanter. He says, I have a half an hour a day to learn. Should I learn Musar or should I learn Halacha? So if it happens to be in the Shulchan Aruch, I'm supposed to learn Halacha, and that's all the time we have. So Yisrael says, learn Musar. Why should I learn Musar? You have to learn Halacha. He says, if you learn Musar, you'll realize you have more than 5 minutes a day, a half hour a day. So we have to just that extra little bit. That's what we should do as our preparation for Shavuos. You know, we have an interesting thing. Tuesday's Rosh Chodesh. Wednesday they call it Yom HaMiyuchas. And Thursday, Friday, and Shabbos is the Shloshim, 3 days of preparation. And they call it the Thursday Yom HaMiyuchas. There are different reasons why they call it Yom HaMiyuchas, but it's sandwiched in between Rosh Chodesh and the 3 days of wells. We don't say Tachnun on that day either, on the Wednesday, because it's to realize that and I started to show what's special about it. But L'maisa, there's 3 days of well and an extra day. We should use these days to prepare ourselves for this Yantif. And this Yantif, I told you, there's no lulav, and there's no shofar, there's no sukkah, there's no matzah. There's only limud Torah. What are we going to do for that limud Torah? And again, Kabbalas Torah was not an event that happened 3,300 years ago. It was an event like that for sure, but it's an event that happens every year. The reason Chag HaShavuos is because it happens every year. I always say, if you ever sing Maal Tzur, interesting words of Maal Tzur, when they talk about Hanukkah, it says, B'nai Bina Yemei Shmona Kavul. The B'nai Bina, the people understood something, Yemei Shmona Kavul. They decided to set 8 days, which means that we had a Ness. Is the Ness for the generations? We have to celebrate Hanukkah every year? The B'nai Bina realized it. Realized that there's a Hanukkah every year. It's not a Hanukkah as one time. Every year we have the same power. So every year we have the same power of Shavuos. We can create for ourselves a Kabbalas Torah, and that's part of what we have to do. So just to sum up, to realize that there's something a lot going on over here. The availance of the sphere and the preparation for Shavuos, it's all connected. There's one thing over here, and it means we should really enter Shavuos with a very positive mind frame. I happen to be, I'm going to make the shiur drop shorter because I have to catch a plane soon, so I'm going to leave. But I'm glad everybody joined us. And Amir Hashem, you'll keep joining us. We'll try to do this every month, and we'll we'll try to get together. To me, it's a great thing to be able to speak to the guys and see the guys, and to be with them. Last week we had a nice get together in Toronto. I wish we could do it in more cities, but we have computers today, so we can get together, Zooming together, but also get us together. And Mirza Hashem will get together more often. And I appreciate everybody came. Everybody should have a Chag Sameach, and should enjoy. It's more than just cheesecake and blintzes. It's Limud HaTorah. We shouldn't just say we need the blintzes so badly that I'm going to forget Limud HaTorah. Okay, thank you everybody for joining me.
Rabbi.
Chag Sameach.
Everybody.
Good
Good to see you. It's good. Who else is here?
Have a safe flight.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, goodbye to everybody, and thank you for joining me.
Bye. Good
You're
yom
well.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you.
Who's at the hotel? Moshe Klaus? Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye, guys.